GoldenEye 007 for the Nintendo 64 was a super stellar game, but the worst thing about it is that we never received a follow-up title that truly was in the same vein. Perfect Dark aside, speaking strictly of James Bond titles in this case. While there were indeed a deluge of titles to come after the smash success of GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64, none would quite capture that lightning in a bottle that Rare managed to achieve in 1997. Enter Goldfinger 64. Goldfinger was initially conceived by a modder known as Monkey Face in 2009, using a level editor called GoldenEye Setup Editor, designed by Subdrag. While Monkey Face eventually let the project go in 2011, Subdrag opted to take the project over, hoping to use this opportunity to further develop and propel GoldenEye Setup Editor. This original team that had spearheaded the start of Goldfinger slowly dropped off, with most of the original team leaving the project and most of the original efforts thus far yielding little fruit. However, Subdrag states, quote, "In the ashes of the original project, a new, very strong new team emerged of dedicated and extremely talented people," unquote. To this degree, Subdrag considers the project to have started in earnest in 2011. Initially, models and other information were posted to a public website in order to illustrate project progress, but at some point a decision was made to conceal most of this material and pivot towards a goal of making this as close as possible to a retail Nintendo 64 style release, a true sequel to GoldenEye. According to Subdrag, the team watched the movie Goldfinger countless times in order to study the film closely so that stage geometry could be modeled as close as possible to the film. And akin to what Rare did with GoldenEye, staff members working on Goldfinger have placed their faces and various characters throughout the game on random guards. It's pretty obvious a lot of hard work went into the crafting of this game, and it does show. Much like GoldenEye, there are 18 campaign stages that follow the path of the Goldfinger film. Also like GoldenEye, some of these stages are done with some manner of creative liberty, as not everything transfers well to this medium, and some additional in-betweens were made in order to flesh it out to 18. There are also 2 bonus stages from other James Bond properties, but instead of Aztec and Egypt, we get Crab Key and Spectre Island. Both pretty interesting stages in their own right. Additionally, there are just as many cheats to unlock in the same fashion. That's to say, beating certain levels on certain difficulties within a certain time frame. Much like GoldenEye, there are 3 difficulties, which are Agent, Secret Agent, and 00 Agent. There are various objectives which are added when choosing higher difficulties, and the levels are designed in a large, sandboxy fashion, like GoldenEye, with the mission briefing providing some hints as to what is to be done, but the rest is up to the player to explore and discover. In this sense, Goldfinger really hits the mark and feels like an authentic successor to GoldenEye. There's also multiplayer, though I haven't had the luxury of being able to check that out yet. As an added bonus, this game was designed to even run on authentic Nintendo 64 hardware if you have an EverDrive. Amazing! As stated, the plot of the game mirrors the film, and Bond begins in the cartel stage, in which Bond is tasked with destroying a few silos, meeting with an undercover agent, and making his way to the bodega. This game will have the player traveling not only to the aforementioned cartel stage in Mexico, but also Florida, Chinese factories, Goldfinger's English golf clubhouse, Goldfinger's ranch in Kentucky, and even Switzerland, in which there's even a driving stage that I definitely wasn't expecting. This isn't even to account for the 2 bonus areas, and typically there are several stages in each location that mirror the film's plot remarkably well. Some of these stages are absolutely massive by standards of the Nintendo 64. A lot of effort was put into making some of these areas relatively believable within the limitations of the hardware. Take the Miami Hotel, for example. During the briefing, it's mentioned that there's a climate-controlled ice rink at the hotel, and while there are absolutely no objectives relating to this statement, it's been rendered in the game. There are many areas to be found in Goldfinger that don't have express gameplay purpose, but that add extra exploratory element lacking in many games. During my playthrough of Goldfinger, I spent time on each of the levels just enjoying the sandbox, admiring the efforts, and becoming familiar with the environments before even attempting the level in a serious fashion. Not every level is massive, however. There are some shorter, corridor-style stages like the England Airport. I still really enjoy this stage, despite the oversaturation of one particular color and hallway-style gameplay. Something about it sits right with me. This isn't to say there aren't low points in the game. There are. Mostly in terms of exterior locations, or stages that lean too heavily on exterior zones. Fort Knox comes to mind, or the golf course grounds. Fort Knox is a massive stage with very little going on in terms of objectives or purpose outside of the core zone, which you start fairly far from. Some of these big, open areas can create quite the difficulty spike as well. I played the entire game on 00 Agent, so that impacts my feelings on this, but stages like Hideout are dark and have an awful lot of enemies lurking about. It took me many attempts to finally beat this stage for the first time. Bomb begins with a silenced weapon, but it's not too far into the level that you have to switch up to the AK-47, and once you start making that kind of noise, you're attracting attention everywhere you go, and the enemies can shoot accurately at a pretty good distance. So if you're not making certain to take out as many as you can, you'll often just be overwhelmed with long-range bullet fire over time. I still really enjoyed this level, so don't get me wrong, it's just something to think about. A lot of the interior stages are tightly designed and well done, but that exterior is a bit of a mixed bag. The two special stages, Crab Key and Spectre Island, are excellent. Crab Key is straight out of Dr. No and features Bond attempting to save Honey Rider and disable Dr. No's laser device while avoiding becoming overly exposed to radiation. While it's a pretty straightforward stage, it's tightly and well designed. Spectre Island, on the other hand, is a completely exterior stage that is like a massive gauntlet. The amount of enemies on this stage is impressive, and they just keep coming. Each new area is packed with enemies, and I had so much fun attempting this stage, and it felt like a worthwhile conclusion to the game. The game, like everything else, features an entirely new soundtrack, and while a lot of it is quite good and memorable, there are a few tracks that are a bit dull and repetitive. I can easily overlook this considering it's an all-volunteer fan project. In light of that, I'd say the job on the soundtrack is stellar, with some definite standout favorites for me, like the Chinese Factory. I'd suggest that if you're a big fan of GoldenEye, this is the game you've been waiting for. It really does capture that feeling of playing the GoldenEye single-player campaign again, in a way that I feel the mainstream licensed titles have failed to do. Getting this game running is a pretty simple affair on PC with an emulator. I'd highly recommend giving it a shot. I have some even better news to close out this video, however. The same team that has done this wonderful work is planning a new project that's pretty far into development. Another Nintendo 64 sequel based on the GoldenEye framework, set to The Spy Who Loved Me. While there isn't a lot of information about this available yet, you can bet I'll not only be watching with an eagle eye, but I'll be playing this the moment it's available. I hope you've enjoyed this quick look at Goldfinger, and I also hope it inspires you to check it out. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like or share some thoughts in the comments section. If you would like to watch more videos of this sort, please subscribe to the channel so I get feedback that this sort of content resonates with viewers out there. Until next time.